Welcome to Agency Bytes, a podcast for agency owners, hosted by agency veteran and coach Steve Guberman. Agency Bytes is a podcast focused on delivering actionable agency information from agency experts in about 25 minutes. Why 25 minutes? Because who has the attention span for much more these days? And you can squeeze in a listen between meetings with time for a bathroom break or coffee refill before your next meeting.
Welcome to Agency Bytes, a podcast dedicated to helping agency owners thrive. I'm Steve Guberman from Agency Outsight, where I coach creative entrepreneurs to build the business of their dreams. Today, my guest is Chris Martinez. He's the CEO and founder of bloompartners.io. Chris turned his passion for helping underdogs into thriving business. He grew his company from zero to millions in revenue. Was recently recognized in 2021 with a Stevie Award for Minority-Owned Business of the Year. Chris also hosts the popular podcast Operation Agency Freedom. Awesome podcast. Definitely throw it on your list. And he's the author of 4 books, including the Amazon bestseller, It's Not Just a Website. And his latest release, Facts Not Feelings, offers insights on scaling a marketing agency with data-driven strategies. Chris, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you having me on. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm pumped to dig into it. You've accomplished an awful lot, and I think you got some really sage advice. And
it's funny as you're listing off those accomplishments, and I'm like, man, I did do all those things, didn't I? Got to give myself a little pat on the back.
I was gonna say, take a second, don't break your arm, but pat yourself on the back, man. You deserve it, absolutely.
Oh yeah, it's kind of hard to reach back there.
It's a good stretch.
Yeah.
They don't teach you that on the mats, do they?
They don't.
Yeah,
I get stretched actually. Yeah, that's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So give the quick, 30-second minute story, like your kind of trajectory to where you are today and what you've been up to.
Yeah. Okay, I'll try and keep it around a minute. So I started a marketing agency in 2012. Saw this opportunity to basically build a web development agency way back then. At the time, I was working for a company that did PPC. It was called Reach Local. I think they might still be around.
Yep.
And they didn't do websites. And I was like, I can do websites. And so we started it. I was moonlighting for the first year, then started doing it full time. That eventually evolved into me building a team in Mexico in 2015, which was totally revolutionary way back then. Everybody was going to the Philippines and India, and I had a team in the Philippines. And I was like, you know what? I'm living in San Diego. There's got to be people in Mexico that I can utilize from an agency to help me service my clients. So I set up a company down in Mexico, and then I set up an office down in Mexico, and I found people, and I was driving back and forth across that border. I've probably crossed the border more than 2,000 times. Yeah, thousands and thousands of times across the border. And so we had this little team that was managing all my clients, and we built it up, and we had a couple hundred clients that we were managing. And then in 2017, I was like, you know what? I keep telling all my agency friends to go and find talent down in Mexico. There's a plethora of people that it's like basically untapped talent. And I was like, I wonder if I can set up a company that kind of plays matchmaker. And I'm able to leverage my unique expertise of hiring and training and finding people in Mexico, and I can connect them with these marketing agencies. And that's when DudeAgency.io was born. And that grew very, very quickly. We had hundreds and hundreds of employees that we've placed over the years. And eventually, the agency started coming to us and asking us, like, how are you finding these people? How are you training them? How are you creating such great SOPs and processes? How can I be more profitable as a business? And so then it kind of like our consulting product grew out of that. And a couple years ago, we recognized, hey, you know what? What if our mission changed? And because we've always wanted to, we're very passionate about helping people to realize their potential, both our staff and our clients. Mm-hmm. And so that was our kind of like our guiding light, that we were always striving for. But we said, what if we could help agencies in a bigger way, not just on staffing, but on other ways where we can help them grow their business and build a business, what I call build a business that is an asset, something that maybe one day you could scale and sell one day. And so we kind of put our heads together and we came up with this new vision for our company. And then earlier this year, we came up with, hey, let's do a big rebrand. We're getting the clients such great results. Let's do this rebrand. We came up with the term or the name Bloom. And so now we are Bloom. And that's the shortest version of the story that I've ever told before.
So you stopped doing client services, and did you keep your team? Did you have to kind of redevelop the team?
Yeah. So so this is a kind of like an important part of the story. So we had a business in Mexico, and we were providing benefits and all this stuff and recruiting. And Dude was essentially an outsourcing company that would connect those two. And so part of this transition, because we wanted everybody to keep their jobs, right? Like I'd actually been approached by people who wanted to buy Dude. And then I had some other clients that said, hey man, like if you're going to sell it, like please let me know so I can make arrangements. And like people were very, very worried that I would sell it. And I gave them my word saying, hey, don't worry, I got you. I'm going to take care of you. And I promised a couple of people that I wasn't going to sell it. And so then we started the transition of moving those employees to work directly with those agency owners. So everybody got to keep their jobs. They're all happy, maintain the relationships with the clients, which is something that's very, very important to me.
Yep.
And so now we're on our new path with Plume, which really isn't that big of a difference because we'd already been doing management consulting prior to us doing the rebrand. It was just like, I felt that was the best way to take care of our people, even though I kind of sacrificed some money.
Yeah, it sounds like there must have been an overlap of management consulting with the services line because people were reaching out to you like, hey, how'd you do this? Oh, cool. We can do some consulting along the same lines.
Absolutely. And then eventually the consulting just took over and we're like, this is the future. This is how we can help solve bigger problems. And like people still come to us and they want talent because that was like a big part of what we did at Dude. But instead of us playing the middleman, why don't we just help you build the system so that you can attract, hire, retain those people directly, and then we'll show you how to do it and we'll help you set it all up. So that's kind of like a consulting aspect of it.
So I know a lot of shops that do that sort of management consulting, and they're finding and placing the talent. Is that also a piece of it where you work with an agency and say, all right, you need, these are the 3 holes you have in your pipeline.
Absolutely.
Help you, find, train up, and retain these 3 people?
Yes, absolutely. And we take a little bit more systematic approach. So there's a couple things that we'll do prior to determining who we're going to place and when we're going to place them. Mm-hmm. So we always start off by looking at the company infrastructure and specifically building out an org chart for them. Because you'd be surprised at how, maybe you wouldn't, but you'd be surprised as how many agencies have never created an organizational chart and don't know like the KPIs for performance for the different departments. And so we want to build out that org chart, and then we can start to identify the gaps in the teams, right? Or who's in the wrong seat, so to speak. And then the second piece of that, and this is where it's my most favorite part, is we get their numbers. And we start to analyze like what's going on with the business. Are their COGS too high? Are their operating expenses too high, right? What are their sales targets? Most agencies don't have quotas or sales targets. And so we can start to look at this whole puzzle and start to piece it together with facts and not feelings as to who we need to hire next and how much can we afford. So for example, if your COGS are too high, meaning you're spending too much money to get the work done, we have to figure out a way to get that percentage down little by little, right? It's not like a crash diet. Let's reduce that cost by 0.5% per month, right? As revenue's going up. So we're increasing the budget that we have to invest in our team members, but it's just not going up that much. Maybe you only have $2,000 a month. Well, with $2,000 a month, maybe you have to look at Latin America or Asia or Ukraine, right? So we can start to piece together how we're going to get the talent that we need that's going to service our clients and also stay within the budget. And that absolutely is something that we love doing for our agencies.
Yeah, subtle plug for the new book. I like that, Facts Not Feelings. And I haven't researched the book, but I fully get the declaration behind that title because so many owners want to act on how they feel about, I want to keep Susan on the team because, they've been with us for so long and Yeah, but let's look at the actual numbers because that tells the true story and those are your facts.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's not an assumption, but
No. That's 100% spot on. I do want to say that I'm not saying ignore your feelings, because we're human beings and we have intuition, and sometimes that intuition is correct.
Mm-hmm.
From my own personal experience, I have learned that sometimes my feelings can lie to me. I think as an agency owner, we are naturally a little bit paranoid about stuff, right? And I actually, when we train leadership staff, I say part of your owner's job is to be a little bit paranoid, right? Because they're always, well, one, they have more to lose, right? So if the business goes under and you're the owner, like, there's a lot of problems that you're going to have to clean up afterwards, including damage to your reputation. So we're naturally going to be a little bit more paranoid. The leadership team, what we need them to prove through facts is that their departments are running according to plan, right?
Yeah.
Showing the data, proving that everything is working the way that it's supposed to be working.
Yeah.
Now, 9 times out of 10, the agency owner might be a little bit paranoid or might be asking questions, and the data is going to show, hey, everything's going great. But maybe that 1 time out of 10, their gut instinct says, hey, we need to look into this more closely. And when we look at the data, we're like, oh, crap, you might be onto something. And then we can dive into it and fix that problem, hopefully before it turns into a bigger issue.
Yeah.
So I'm very much about trusting your gut, but validating with facts.
Love that. Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that I see the most is, sales are starting to decline. We lost a few clients. I'm going to keep my team intact because it feels right, but they're not listening to the numbers in the pipeline saying, I've got to let somebody go. Yeah. And that's one of the bigger things that I see often.
It's really hard. It's really, really hard too.
It's not easy. And I'm not saying like, hey, be callous, slash and burn at all. You have to think strategically. And when the business does come back through a sales process and reinvigoration of outbound, who's going to service them? You've got to have those people still in place. So it's it's certainly not easy. Talk about, I know you guys are big on KPIs. You talked a lot about like departmental KPIs. So you're probably talking about, I don't know, multi 7-figure agencies who have these different departments that can be accountable to. What are some of these numbers that you guys are tracking? How are they tracking them?
Yeah, I mean, I can go by department. I just read this book. I think it was called like Your One Number. And it kind of like, I'd heard this term before, but it's kind of refocused me back. It's like, we can give a lot of KPIs, but I want every department head to know what's their one most important KPI, right? So for us, the operations team, the operations manager or operations director, absolutely, it's the gross margin. And on the flip side, the inverse of that is the cost of goods sold. Like, how much are we spending to get those projects out the door? That's the number one thing that I want them to be accountable to. On the customer experience side, it's churn, right? I want to see 3% or less per month of monthly churn. Marketing, number of appointments that we're booking. Like, how many appointments are we actually booking for new business? Yeah. Sales, it's the new revenue that we're bringing in. Sales got to close deals. And then finance, for me, it's the net, right? Revenue, I see so many agencies that are doing 7 figures or multiple 7 figures in revenue, but the profit is terrible and the owner's stressed out. They're not making what they deserve, right? So for me, it's the net. Like, what are we actually dropping down to the bottom line? That's the most important. So those are the bigger KPIs that I want those department heads to be accountable for.
So I'm not familiar with that book, but I know One Number as a mindset is very much an EOS mindset from Traction. Some departments, they struggle with that. I mean, I've been on marketing teams running EOS. It's like, what is my one number? Is it inbound? Is it meetings? So there are departments that struggle with it. Do they, in your experience or how you guys practice it, do they all need to point to top line, bottom line, overall vision from the CEO, or do you not play in that space?
I'm a huge advocate of EOS, actually. We did our level 10 meeting earlier today, right? And so the difference, or I would say the weakness of EOS for marketing agencies, is when you're setting your rocks and your vision, right? So, and if you want me to explain this further, I totally can. But in an EOS meeting, or the way that they want you to run it, is you kind of get together in a group and you say, okay, this is what I want to work on, right? This is what I think that we need to do. And I think that's wrong. What I think needs to happen, and what we teach, is that you start from the numbers, right? Again, let's start from the facts. Yeah. What are we actually doing? What what is our gross margin, for example? Like, do we need to improve that? How many leads are we generating? How many of those leads are we converting, right? What's our churn rate? Are those people canceling? And then let's look at those facts, and then let's create our rocks. Once you do that, and everybody agrees that these are the 3 to 5 things that we need to work on for the quarter, now everybody's much more accountable to those goals, and it doesn't feel like we just kind of pulled them out of the air arbitrarily. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the
your
huge
efforts
difference.
need to point to those numbers as a team and as an individual. So you're all, to stay on the EOS lingo, so you're all rowing in the same direction. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the way that I think if you do it, like you still can use the EOS format of setting your rocks and setting your 1-year goal and your 3-year vision and all that stuff. But I think when it actually comes to determining what your rocks are going to be for the quarter, you have to start from the numbers and the data and the facts.
Agreed. Yeah, love that. For those listening, if you're not familiar with EOS, Entrepreneur's Operating System, pick up a book called Traction by Gino Wickman. It'll explain it. There are EOS implementers who are agency specific. Reach out to me. Happy to make some introductions. It's a beautiful thing. I was actually introduced to EOS at my last role. Wasn't even in an agency where I was leading the marketing team. And it, for me, was a game changer personally and professionally, from a mindset shift and how to accomplish things and how to track things. And so rolling out, you're introducing KPIs to teams, different teams in marketing agencies. What are some of the downfalls that you see in this format of goal setting, mindset shifts, things like that?
Let's just start from the department head role. One of the first challenges that I see is a lack of clarity on, or I should say, they are not shifting the identity, right? So when you have a department head, it's usually somebody who was a very good designer, or they were the best at running the ads, or they were a great salesperson. And they say, okay, you're the best. Let's make you the department head. And what needs to happen, I'm not saying that that's a bad process, but what needs to happen with the individual is they need to recognize that they are assuming a new identity. And there's a mindset shift that happens, right? This happened to me too, because when I first came out of college, I got into sales, and then I became a sales manager, and I was a terrible sales manager. And I recognized this back in myself, is that I still had the mindset as a sales rep. But what needs to shift is now you're the leader, you're the manager, and your responsibilities are different, right? It's not like, if I take myself as an example, it's not me going out and closing every deal possible. It's I need to empower my team members and give them the tools and teach them how to do sales on their own, and then hold them accountable to that, right? That's where my responsibility lies as a manager. So that's the first thing that I see, is that people really have to go through that identity shift. I think the second thing is that us as owners, we don't provide enough clarity to the individual as to what do they need to do to be successful in their job. And this is true of managers, and I would say every other position, right? I like to use like sports as an analogy. So when you look at, I'm not a big football fan, but when you look at a professional football team in the NFL, right? I don't know if you've ever heard, like, they'll give certain players bonuses for like scoring a certain number of touchdowns, right?
Running yards, or receptions,
running yards, exactly. Sacks.
Yeah.
They give them bonuses because of that's the metric that I need you to hit. That's going to allow our team to advance to the playoffs, or maybe get to the NFL, or win a certain number of games. And what's interesting is that we'll glorify, or we'll really focus on how much the player is making for hitting that KPI. How much do you think the team is making for that player hitting that KPI? They might have given that player $1 million bonus, but you better believe that the office is making 10, 20, 30, maybe $100 million off of that.
Yeah.
So taking that analogy, look at the agency world. We need to get to that level of clarity with our team members and let them know, hey, this is what I need you to do. Kind of going back to that one number. This is what I need you to do to be able to empower our team, our company, to win. This is success for you, right? And if we do that, guess what? the majority of your people are going to rise to the occasion. I promise you. The problem is that we don't have that level of clarity with them.
I think absolutely we don't have that level of clarity. I also think one of the big challenges is that leadership doesn't clear the way for the leadership down the rung to have the resources they need to know what the and you said it, like, I want to make sure you know what the expectations are of what you need to be doing. And shifting into this new job, it's rarely asked, although I would like to think that it's more asked in the agency culture than it is in corporate. What is it that I can do to clear the way for you? Or what support do you need? Like getting, like, I don't see that often enough.
Right.
I see it more often in the agency space than I think I've ever seen it in the corporate world that I was in. But I think those are the kind of things that newfound leaders, within the team need done for them. Right.
Yeah. Right. I'm a big fan of Jocko Willink. I don't know if you've read any of his books.
I don't know.
So he's read, he wrote the, oh my God, I always think of the second book, The Dichotomy of Leadership. But the first book was called Extreme Accountability, or something along those lines. It'll come back to me. We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that he talks about is that in your role as a leader, right, is empowering your team members and making sure that they essentially have the tools to be successful in their job. And it seems like common sense, but I do believe it's one of those things that you need to be conscious of. Yeah. Like just checking in with your people. Hey, is there anything else that you need to be successful in the mission? Jocko was a Navy SEAL, and so he has a lot of like military stories, and if you're into that, whatever. But the point being is that he talks about, don't put somebody into a mission, right? If it's in the military, like they could die. Don't put somebody's life at risk because they don't have the right tools. Right? Make sure that these folks are empowered. And then once they're empowered, again, it comes back to the accountability. I do need you to make sure that you perform. Right.
Yeah. And it's a top-down culture thing. I was always taught as a leader, like you push your team to the forefront when there's something to celebrate. But if there's a sword to fall on, that's your job.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so if that's, not driven through top-down culture, how does the mid management or mid-level leadership know that they also need to do the same thing? And it's the same mindset with delegation. You're now a leader. You're not supposed to be writing pay-per-click ads. You're supposed to be, supporting your team writing pay-per-click ads and things like that. So all right. So you're establishing KPIs for the different departments. What tools are you guys using to implement tracking? Like, are they?
This is going to sound super simple. Just Google Sheets. Okay. Honestly, that's all it takes. So like, I'm trying to think of like our tech stack. We use Lucidchart a lot. ClickUp, obviously, for project management. We're big advocates of time tracking, so there's a few tools that they can use. And then Google Sheets. Like, I don't think it has to be that complicated. And then Google Docs as well for job descriptions, things like that.
Yeah. Listen, I know shops that are using, Monday.com tied into Airtable through Zapier, back into HubSpot, back out through ClickUp. Like, too much. Overcomplicate the hell out of it unnecessarily. Yeah. But they're getting, real-time data into these dashboards to be able to see metrics on performance, inbound, outbound. So I don't know.
So I think the first barrier to entry is just getting them to use the system. Yeah. Right. If we're going to build something out and it's going to be all complicated and we're going to have this massive rollout, it's making it harder for adoption. Right. Yeah. So we got to get them to just use it. Everybody can use a Google Sheet. Right. And then after everybody's gotten into this cadence and they're very comfortable and they see the value in these new reports that we're doing and these new KPIs. Okay, then let's expand and see if we can make it a little bit more fancy. Yeah. We have a really, really amazing data science team on our staff. And so they can do some really cool stuff with Google Sheets. So, maybe one day we'll develop our own software. Who knows? But for now, we can get everything done with Sheets.
Yeah, even, I've got a couple of templates on my resources page, and they're just robust Google Sheets where you want to know what your average hourly rate should be for your team, punch everything in. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any data scientists at my fingertips, but you can do some amazing stuff there. Tell you what, last night I could have used a data scientist. I couldn't figure out a function in Google Sheets. It was driving me mad. So
Hey, now you have me. I'll just ask
now
my
I've
boy
got
Rod.
you. Hey, Chris,
Yeah.
how do I? Yeah.
Well, okay,
All
so
right,
let me
man.
get clear. I can't do them, but a Rod on my team, he will absolutely bang that out.
Awesome. I'm going to use you next time. I'm going to shift gears real quick, wrap this up with some rapid fire questions, the
Okay.
answers to which can be personal, professional, digital, or the opposite of digital, physical. We'll go with that. Analog or digital. There you go. So what's something
written?
What's something you can't get enough of these days? You're binging, whether it's a show, a podcast, a hobby, a sport, or whatever.
So for me, I'm coming back from an ACL injury. I mentioned that to you. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's my time to rehab my knee. Honestly, like I am so eager to get back to training competitively for jiu-jitsu. That's the thing that I'm always thinking about that.
And that's like a 9-month rehab for
I'm at 9 months
people.
and I mean, I'm 44 years old. I'll be 45 in January. So maybe it's 9 months if you're in your 20s, but for me, it's taking a little bit longer. Like from average person, you would never know that I just had surgery. But I want to get to a level where I can, compete in my sport. So it's just taking a little bit longer.
So my brother's a few years older than you. He'll be 50 this year. And I think 2 years ago, he had the same surgery. He had an ACL and maybe an MCL or something like that. And he was back on the mat. He also does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, not competitive, not like super competitively, but he was back on the mat within 9 to 12 months.
Awesome. So, I trained last night, actually. It was like the first time. Oh, awesome. Man, skiing. I'd be terrified of that.
Let's go.
Yeah.
What's a tool that you recently integrated into your life? Again, digital, physical, whatever, that you look back and you're like, man, how did I live without this thing?
See, this is the thing is I'm not like a tool guy. Like I don't jump onto a lot of the software the way that we do. I would say the thing that I love, and this is not new, is ChatGPT. Partly because like I love Star Wars and I view ChatGPT as my C-3PO. So like I use that constantly. I think it's one of the greatest inventions that we've had, definitely in this century. So that's my answer.
So let me go off on a little question tangent about that for you, because so many marketing agencies and outsource agencies are panicking. We're about to break into Q4 2024, just for date reference. How has AI impacted you and your team and your revenue stream and things like that?
I mean, in terms of like impacting our revenue stream, I think it's been helpful because we're able to leverage these tools or show our agencies how to leverage these tools to get stuff done faster. I think it's a massive opportunity. I don't really get too scared about these types of things. It just depends on how good are you at adapting to change, right? Because this is not going away. If anything, it's going to advance. I listened to an interview that the CEO of OpenAI did, and he said when ChatGPT 5 comes out, it will make ChatGPT 4 look like an embarrassment. It will do the work of an average employee. So if that comes to fruition, right, like we are never going back. There are a lot of things that are going to change, but I think if you're open-minded enough and if you're willing to adapt to the change and embrace the tools, then life is going to be a lot better. Right.
I love that.
I'm very, very excited about this. And because I'm really stoked about having a real life C-3PO.
I love that. And then finally, well, let me say, I love that because there's so much kind of fear, scarcity mindset chatter going on about it. And your approach and your vision on it is embrace it. There's an opportunity here. Like, don't run from it. Embrace it. Learn how to leverage it. Use it to your advantage. And I think that's the right mindset. Finally, an invaluable piece of business advice that you can share.
I'm trying to think. So my mind goes back to quotes, and well, there's a quote that I say. I don't know if I should quote myself. That sounds a little arrogant. Who cares? I say that, and I learned this from somebody else. The business is a reflection of you. And what that means is that the business is an outcome of how other things are going on in your life. And so I say that there's 4 main areas that you need to feel really fulfilled, not just happy, because I think people chase happiness, and I don't really think that's the goal. I think the goal is actually fulfillment. So I want you to feel fulfilled in your physical health, your mental health, the relationships that you have with other people, and then ultimately the business. And so if there's usually something off in one of those other parts of your life, then the business is probably going to be a little bit off, right? And the easy example is like, if I have an argument with my wife in the morning, that sticks with me, right? And I know that I'm not coming to work and I'm not being the best leader. I'm probably not making the best decisions. I'm probably not showing up for sales calls the best way, or I'm not treating my clients the best way, right? And so that's really the focus, is like, if there's something going wrong or that you're not super stoked on in the business, let's look at what else is going on with me. And then let's start there.
I love that. Beautiful. Thank you for quoting yourself. Chris Martinez, bloompartners.io. Appreciate your time, my friend. Thank you for being with us, sharing all of your wisdom.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks again for tuning in to Agency Bytes. If you know someone with expert knowledge on a topic that agency owners would love to hear about, go to agencyoutsight.com/podcast-guest and nominate them.